Everett, what do you hear from parents that are inquiring about coming to try out for Cleveland Force?
Number one thing I hear from families these days is, what opportunities do their kids have to advance? They're asking questions about the player pathway in relation to what leagues do we participate in. We're very blessed that we are able to participate in the top competitive leagues in the country from a youth perspective with the ECNL, ECNLR, and then the GLA League. So being able to offer families that opportunity is great. Also, with the younger families right now, I'm hearing more about 11v11 soccer at an earlier age. I'm hearing families asking that question, hey, when do you start 11v11 soccer? Really excited to share with families. We really started at U12 in the spring season, looking to expand that as well. So families are always looking for that opportunity. And the other one is, do they have a team experience? So families are asking that because they know we're player-centered. They understand we have different training centers, as we call them. But now we're able to offer them, training centers on the east, the west, and the south. So they're able to have a full immersed team experience while still being part of a talent ID process that provides an opportunity for their kid to grow and make one of the ECNL rosters in the future when they get to U13 or older. So families have been really inquiring about the pathway, the opportunities that are presented from those pathways as we go forward, and really about the development things that we offer as far as either 11v11 versus 9v9 and our supplemental program. What are you doing to help my kid improve themselves? And we do have a supplemental program that's called Athletes of Excellence, or AOE. So they always like hearing about that and knowing that it's something they can participate in and get to know the club a little bit better.
Yeah, and I'll go back to something you said, Everett, with the geographic locations. I think, admittedly, that is something that isn't consistent across the board right now because we're growing in the southeast market, where we are working diligently to develop teams in that area. So some of those families may not experience what West Side families experience with set teams where it's consistent with the same coach and the same player pool. I think that is something that we try to be candid with, to say you have to have a little patience with us as we grow through this transition period, that we project into the future to say in the next year to 2 to 3 years, we'll have built out, consistent, organically grown and developed geographic specific teams, especially 12 and below.
Yep. Nope. Totally agree with that 100%.
Ever, what would you say has changed the most in youth soccer, specifically in the Northeast Ohio market, since you've joined back in as a professional soccer coach in the mid-2000s?
The one thing I would say has probably changed the most is the interactions with the parents, meaning that the parent interaction, we was hoping that it would shift and they wouldn't be as vocal from the sidelines and overbearing with their kids. I'm actually seeing a trend where that actually is more now, where families are even more competitive, more engaged, and actually more demanding that their kid has to be placed on a certain roster. Almost a sense of entitlement has increased over the last decade or so as I look into it. There's something to be said about that because we want our kids to do well. We want our kids to be aspiring for that next level, but I do feel there's a lack of humility and respect to the process that it's longer than just a short-term thing. So,
can I ask you a question on that? Do you think that also is a key piece to your educational component? The effort that you've put in, I think, is beyond anything I've ever seen for parent education to set realistic rules, regulations, expectations through the educational developmental pathway.
Absolutely. I think the education pathway has really influenced what we've tried to do as an organization. Is that I mentioned earlier, we have things called check-in meetings and IDPs at a very young age. Those aren't just for the children. Those are for the parents as well, to educate them on what this process will look like. Because we got great feedback from our families. Like, we weren't doing a great job, self-admittedly, of setting the expectation and letting them know what the next step might look like for their kid. Now me in particular, personally made it a part of our process that we're going to engage those families face to face as much as we can to say, this is the plan that the club has for your children or your child, male or female, wherever they are on the spectrum, and letting them know that this is an earned opportunity as you go forward. But talent has something to do with that. So yeah, I absolutely think that because what we're seeing in the marketplace here in Northeastern Ohio, and to be honest, around the country, we've made it a personal thing, if you will, and a professional thing to make sure we address that based on the education we receive from U.S. Soccer, through our own leadership development as well, because we do take time as an organization to get together as leaders and really kind of grow ourselves so that we can grow others as we go on. And we think that parent education part of it is very important to the overall development of the child. You know, if we don't get these sidelines to be better as far as our behaviors and actions towards our children, both pre-game, during game, and post-game, we're not only having an impact on the player, but on the coach, on the referees, on the ecosystem as a whole. And we won't have this beautiful game if we don't start to curve that. It's really important. It's probably the most important thing to me right now is that parent education piece.
What do you hear from parents on, if you could summarize, what are some of the most common pain points that they come back to you with beyond the obvious ones of playing time, role on the team, position on the team, your substitution patterns?
Yep.
What do you hear?
Keeping it short, player psychology. You know, my son or daughter is feeling X, right? And that's what I hear the most. Yeah, we hear those other things, like you said, playing time, position on the field, the why, but it all comes back to player psychology and building the grit theory, if you will, to help the player go through these troughs or the storming phase of their own individual development. So the most that I hear out of every parent as far as a main point, a pain point is my son or daughter is feeling X, right? And it's typically from a negative lens, but then we try and frame that for the player and for the family to say, hey, let's have this IDP meeting so you can build a relationship with your coach. So they better understand, like, we're here to support you. We're here to be a part of your process that you have to take ownership of that is never going to be perfect, right? I do sympathize and empathize with the families, though, because they don't have that information, right? Your son or daughter will get into the car with you, and they're feeling something from that experience, right? Mm-hmm. You just coached the game, and maybe you had to make a coaching choice based on the game resistance that was there. And parents then come back, and they're much better in our organization of asking as opposed to demanding and telling. You know, and I think that is so amazing. It's been such a change since the pandemic that families are a little bit more engaging in our club to really take that time to work with us as we work with them to provide the best experience possible for their kids. Yep.
Everett, what do you see from families that maybe is a positive behavior that you as a technical director, sporting director, as well as a program director in a 9v9 environment, what do you see that you would say, I would love to see emulation of that type of behavior or approach?
Yeah, what I'd love to see more, Marco, is more families taking time to invest in a growth mindset. You know, there's a lot of material out there right now that they can have a conversation with their kid as far as like, hey, what does it mean to be a growth mindset person versus a fixed mindset as they go forward? I'd love to see more families emulating positive communication with their coaching staff. You know, asking questions as opposed to demanding things and asking for things directly or indirectly. Those are just the firm things as far as having a conversation. You know, families are more inclined to have a conversation about their child's development and not make the assumption that what we are doing as a club is a detriment to their child, but an added value both from adversity and positive affirmation and reinforcement. You know, because those things have to kind of coincide with each other. The other thing is having conversations at home. You know, families that I've interacted with that are having a little bit more of a quote-unquote mature conversation early, find that those players are excelling right away, as opposed to the families that are coming to us and telling us that they told their kid X, and now their kid is expected to meet this adult expectation when there's never been a conversation with the child. So to clarify that is more families that are asking their children what they want to do as opposed to saying this is what you need to do. You know, that's a really important thing when I'm listening to these things in our check-ins and IDPs. Am I profiling the family? Absolutely. Just trying to find out how they interact with their child to make sure it's in line with our values and what we have learned provides the best opportunity for long-term success.